Hey everyone, it's Chris from AV Asia Pacific Magazine here, and welcome to another virtual demonstration that we're doing during the lockdown phase of society that we're in at the moment. Today it gives me great pleasure to introduce you to a Barco weConnect virtual classroom session that we're sitting in on. The classroom is being conducted, overseen, directed by Barco's Craig Saunders. So, hey Craig, how you going?
Very good, thanks Chris. Thanks for the opportunity to showcase our weConnect virtual classroom product.
Yeah, no, great. And so I'll let you describe the setup here, who we've got on the call, and I'll let you get on with the demonstration, and I guess we'll have a chance to pitch in and stick our hand up and maybe ask some questions throughout the session.
Sure. Okay, so yeah, thanks very much. We have a vast array of students joining in from all around Australia at the moment. So some joining from Sydney, some joining from Melbourne, some joining from Brisbane. So it gives us an easy way to focus on this remote learning challenge that we have at the moment during the COVID-19 crisis. So Barco really developed a product called weConnect to help not only in this virtual use case, but also a flexible way to teach active learning, traditional style classroom teachings, and also the remote distance challenge that we have today with virtual classroom and hybrid virtual classroom. So we've got an interactive packed product where you can draw on our whiteboards. I can ask quizzes and polls. So it really sets us aside from the UC platforms like Teams and Zoom. It's really designed for education purposes. So throughout the 30 to 40 minute session, we'll run through a slide deck, which will give you an opportunity to answer some quizzes and polls and interact into the session with not only with me, but also with your classmates. So without further ado, first a little bit of a guided tour about what you can do on your screen as a participant. So here you see a representation of what you would see on your screen. So on the left-hand side, you can see an array of source content that you can freely choose. When we move to the whiteboard, you can select on the whiteboard. So just like in a realistic classroom experience, you have the choice to look at the teacher, to look at his presentation, potentially look at your classmate sitting next to you, and focus on what you want to see. In the bottom left-hand area, you'll see the three most recent speakers. So as we're in a virtual environment, you can see who's actually currently speaking and the three most recent active speakers. On the bottom right side, you'll see your camera view. So you know when you're in picture, how you're looking. So if you're positioned in front of a camera, you may appear as a silhouette. So you know you need to adjust your camera settings. You can mute your microphone and mute your camera in case you have joining from home and you have an annoying dog next door that's barking. You can mute yourself, or if you need to cough. Just above the mute buttons is also a hand raise button. So you can pop up, if you have a question, pop up your hand to ask a question. We'll get into that shortly. On the right-hand side is the area that we call the timeline. So this is an area where the quizzes and polls will be asked. You have the freedom to chat amongst yourself as a student. So if you have questions or want to say hi, you can chat amongst classmates. If you have a question directed to the host, you can click on Ask the Host and ask a dedicated question. Sometimes students are a little bit timid in class, so they want to ask that question anonymously. So they can tick the anonymous checkbox. They can ask that question anonymously. The teacher can then follow up with that student privately later on, so he's not made fun of during class if he feels it's a silly question. If I ask you to share your content, you can click on Share. That's using our AV.technology technology built into Chrome. So that will actually ask you to share a desktop, an application on your desktop, or a Chrome browser tab that you have open. That won't be shared to screen straight away. That'll be moderated content appearing on my screen, so that way I can bring it to screen when I want to use your content. So we also have the flexibility on the source side to tailor that to a specific faculty. So if we're talking now in the COVID-19 crisis, we maybe want to address the medical faculty, so we could potentially add additional sources, linking to microscopes or endoscopes, for example. If we're doing a virtual session with engineering faculty, we may want to use a GoPro that you can get inside an engine bay, for example. So it really gives us the flexibility to chop and change what sources we want to use at any one point in time. So now we all know where the hand raising button. Please raise your hand if this is your first virtual classroom training session. Okay, good. So I think we've got a lot of newcomers. We see a few that have come back for a few extra sessions. Thanks, Lucky, and thanks, Jacob. And also getting a bit of a test on how we use our whiteboard functionality. So I'll focus you guys onto the whiteboard now, so you should be seeing that on your screen. And then when I move to my presentation slide, I can actually capture a snapshot of the presentation and bring that to the whiteboard. So now when I enable my drop pin, I should be able to, you should be able to see on your whiteboard the drop pin enabled, and then drag that to select your favorite pet. So please use your drop pin and drag it into the area where you're selecting your favorite pet. Well, we have a lot of dog lovers. We have a couple of cats fans, Craig and Chris. And nobody loves birds or a fish, I guess. So straight away you can see, the interactivity tools that we have. It's really showing how we actually can use that as a heat map or a trend in a basic question to get a real life answer. If we could potentially put up a map of Australia and say, where is your location? You could use that drop pin to show exactly where you're located right now. So if I want to use a different type of interactivity on the whiteboard, I can create a new whiteboard. I can enable collaborative drawing, and here it'll allow me to draw on the whiteboard, and it'll also provide you a set of pins on your end that you can also draw back on the whiteboard. So everyone can choose a different colour and have a draw back onto the whiteboard. So of course, if you're using an iPad or a Microsoft Surface, it's probably going to be a little bit easier to draw on the whiteboard without using a mouse. But from my point, all I see is a lot of scribble right now. So we don't have any artists in the group, unfortunately. Oh, we have someone trying to be an artist doing a squiggly face. So I can actually capture these whiteboards that can be used for reference and revision later on. So after the end of the session, you can go to the past sessions and you can download this data and refer back to it at a later point. Just like I mentioned, I can also go back to the whiteboard. So later in the session, if we need to refer back to the snapshot about whose favourite pet, who selected the other, Gavin and Greg, I can then ask them back later on, what pet do they actually choose? So maybe Greg, you can offer what made you select other? Why did you select the other pet? Gavin?
I like snakes.
You like snakes? Okay, that's a good answer. Greg, how about you? Greg's busy with his phone right now, so maybe we have to write him up for not paying attention. So now we'll move back into the presentation mode, so I can focus you back onto the teacher content, and we move on to the slide deck. So let's take a step back. Maybe this slide looks familiar for everyone. When you were at university, it's that real lean back 19th century teaching style, or what we call the lean back experience. So how do we engage students today? We really want them to have that lean forward experience and be involved in the session, and we do that with active learning. So we understand that active learning really increases the motivation, the retention of content, and also the success factors of students participating in active learning sessions. So almost every university has some sort of active learning collaboration style facility on campus today. So throughout universities and schools, education institutes, they are teaching in vastly different ways in particular use cases. So we understand didactic method is that real traditional style classroom. Some students joining, facing forward towards the teacher, the traditional screen behind the teacher, that real traditional lecture hall or traditional classroom. However, the new styles coming in are collaborative or interactive methods. We have discursive methods where students are presenting their group work to the class themselves, and the teacher is moderating the content. And also the reflective method where students are actually participating in group work together where there's potentially no teacher present. So to cover all of those different use cases, we have 3 offerings within our weConnect platform. So one to cover our interactive classrooms. So it's really designed to where students are participating from within the room, the traditional classrooms and lecture halls. We have the collaboration style classrooms where we're focusing on interactive and collaborative learning, breaking students out into groups or pods so the teacher's free to roam around the room and discuss with each group. And then we're also looking at the virtual classroom or hybrid virtual classroom where we're focusing on students in a remote setting. So weConnect is a very scalable platform, so we're not focusing on just deploying systems in one room. We can really focus this on campus-wide deployment. And the biggest campus-wide deployment we have to date is our Northampton University in the UK. They have over 168 classrooms deployed, each of different styles. So that's made up of 24 huddle spaces, 81 interactive classrooms, 35 connected classrooms, 23 collaboration rooms, and 5 lecture halls. So when we speak about collaboration classrooms, we speak about, connected classrooms, we speak about being able to overflow to particular additional classrooms. So here you can oversell or have a complete classroom full, and then we can actually add in connected classrooms where people can overflow to. So you need some infrastructure in place, like cameras and speaker sets, where the students in the overflow room can actually follow what's happening in the main room, so the teacher can actually see the students and make sure they're not running around and swinging off the rafters. He'll be able to see them on the camera, raise their hand if they have a question, and they'll be able to speak to each other via the microphone and speaker system. So it really allows the university to have flexible seating without booking out huge lecture halls for somewhat popular classes. They can use this overflow connected classroom facility. So coming into more of a focus in today's environment with the coronavirus, everyone is scrambling to teach in a remote setting. How we focus on remote teaching and remote learning. So based on that, we know that distance learning has its challenges. As a company, we're focusing on internal UC platforms like Teams and Zooms. We're joining meeting rooms. Our head office is based in Belgium, so we're always joining meetings quite late at night. Sometimes I'm joining from my couch, and maybe I'm not as engaged in the session as I should be. So how do we really promote that additional engagement? Well, that's where we come up with the platform weConnect to really solve those distance learning challenges, like students feeling lonely and disengaged in the session. They really have that real lack of intimacy. Like when you're in a training session, you want to have a training buddy. You want to be able to ask those questions directly to them. So here we provide that avenue for you to ask questions with your colleagues and classmates in the chat functionality. You can see them, see their facial expressions, and sort of join that experience with them along the way. So weConnect platform virtual classroom was designed in conjunction with our colleagues from our friends from ASA Business School. We're going to take a short video now about how their experience is with the Barco virtual classroom.
ASA Business School is one of the leading business schools in the world. We provide experiences that are both degree and non-degree or executive education. It's still pretty challenging to get 60, 80 people into an environment where they can all hear and see each other seamlessly, where they can share content and co-create content, where they can interact with different tools. So the virtual classroom allows us essentially to conduct the same methodology, which is a rich discussion of a particular scenario, a case, in a virtual context, a context where people are at their home, the faculty is here on campus and are able to engage in this debate.
We realized that trying to reproduce the experience in the physical classroom with remote participants was one thing, but we could go far beyond, because digitalizing the learning experience allowed you to go for additional features. For example, you could track or you could measure things that in a physical classroom typically are difficult to track or to measure. the time that the person is speaking or participating, the number of times that he raised his hand, the results of all votes, and use all that material to enhance the experience for the professor and of course for the participant.
We're actually on the way to come fairly close to the experience that we're used to and we kind of value so much in the physical classroom and face-to-face environment. In fact, it's easier to see faces, it's easier to see names, it's easier to see when someone raises a hand, it's easier to keep track who has spoken, who hasn't spoken. And so it's a combination. You rely on the things that you do in the physical classroom, and most of them still work and work pretty well. But on top of this, you have another tool set, the polls, some of the other things that you can complement or that you can add to the traditional techniques.
So you can see from the video that ESA are really using this in a real-life use case environment, addressing their MBA and executive MBA students. Really allowed them to provide that flexibility for their students to join from the office. Maybe the managers are travelling abroad, so it allows them to join from the hotel or even from home. So it was a real additional revenue stream for them to be able to provide that flexibility of learning without the students coming into the classroom. So they've really seen an uptake in students joining in because they can provide that flexibility on their behalf. So here comes our first quiz and poll question that we're going to ask. So please let me know what technology your institute is currently using when conducting real-life virtual classroom or meeting sessions. So this is an open answer question. You'll be able to type in the timeline that'll appear on the right-hand side, and you can select what your answer is. So I also pop up on the content, the polls source, so it allows you to see how much time is remaining to answer the question, and that'll also display some results. In the meantime, I'll also focus you guys on to see the room camera or participant view, what I look at. So you can see everyone's answer is popping up over the top of their face. Lee and Peter are still yet to answer. The poll is already exhausted. So that way I can see, straight away I see a more of a focus on Teams. Everyone seems to be really focused on Teams. There's some WebEx users, there's a couple of Zoom users. Hopefully Greg is not caught out by the security issues facing Zoom at the moment. However, I think Zoom as a company has done a fantastic job trying to solve this coronavirus issue very quickly. So I can end the session now, and you'll see popping up in the timeline the results and how people answered. The top answer was Teams, of course. So looking at about how we actually set up a solution like a virtual classroom from Barco, here we have a 2x2 video wall, which is actually a representation of what's appearing in our office right now. So there's a hardware device, what we call the NCN100, that appears behind each of the video wall display, providing the tile nodes or participant nodes, allowing you to join and show your video feed from your remote location. So each of these hardware devices are acting as an encoder or a decoder to display information or capture information from cameras or from whiteboards. We're using Dante audio to actually stream audio input and output of these devices, so it allows you guys as participants to actually talk to each other and also for me to actually talk to you guys. So for those people with their microphones open, how is the audio coming through from your side?
Good.
Audio is very good.
Yeah.
It's very excellent.
So I can see when people talk, and you'll notice on the three most recent speakers, everyone's camera would have changed about who was actually speaking at that time. So on the video wall, I can see your name area that highlights in blue, so I know you're the current speaker. So
that's very good, Craig.
Thank you. So looking at how we deploy our weConnect fast kits in this situation, we understand that everyone wants to be up and running with a virtual classroom solution very quickly. Without some of the stocking or delivery issues that are facing some products now coming out of China, Here we can actually deploy these weConnect fast kits by using some basic NCN 100 devices and a Logitech camera or a poly camera that you can connect easily to the NCN device. So we can be up and running within a day and be running virtual classrooms within a week. So looking at some of the reference cases that we have available around the world, again, this is the traditional style classroom shown at our friends from Northampton University in the UK. You can see the teacher using his Microsoft Surface, the students he's teaching to in the front row using their laptop to participate in questions and polls. You can see behind him they're using the Whiteboard tool to show a graph and a curve, and maybe he's using the pointer to potentially show the standard deviation of that curve. Looking at a collaboration style room, here you can see the university is using really a flexible classroom. They can wheel in furniture as they need in a collaboration style setting, and because they have that flexibility to reuse that room in a different way, they can use maybe in the afternoon a traditional style classroom method where all the chairs are facing towards the front, and they can use those screens on the walls and repurpose them for confidence monitors for the teacher, and if it's a touch screen, potentially a whiteboard to be able to use in the session. Again, here's a shot from our friends at ASA Business School. You can see in front of Yevgeny there on the floor, he has some confidence monitors providing feedback for him about what slide he's up to, and also what the students are actually seeing, so he knows what they're viewing when he moves to the whiteboard or when they're moving to a particular camera. So in front of my view here, I have a few confidence monitors helping me out. You'll be able to see that in the recording. Also from ESA, you see in the bottom right of the slide, he has an assistant. So it's someone to really assist him and gauge what camera views and what questions are being asked, so the assistant can actually really provide a great assistance for him during the session. He can manage pan, tilt and zoom joystick to make sure he's always in frame on the different camera views, answer questions and push out the quizzes and polls. The feedback from Yevgeny during a real-life virtual classroom session at ESA was that teaching to 60 or 80 students is really a mental workout. Normally you're teaching to a room where maybe people are hiding at the back row. Here everyone has that real front row experience. You can see the faces, you can see their names, so it's a real mental challenge and a mental workout for him once the session's complete. And last but not least, probably the most unique use case is the hybrid virtual classroom. So this is where some students are joining from within the classroom with the teacher, some students joining in a remote setting. So Kulak University in Belgium, some students joining from the corporate campus and some joining from the Leuven campus. So it really allows that university to promote additional revenue streams coming in and on-selling that course potentially to areas that are not available or don't have the flexibility to offer that class. So again comes one of another quiz question. So this one's a multiple choice question. So my institute is currently considering adopting virtual classroom solution within A, less than 6 months, B, 6 to 12 months, C, greater than 12 months, or D, I don't know. Okay, good. I can see quite a few differing answers coming in. So, Jake, you selected A. Please explain why you're looking at something, setting up something within 6 months.
Well, I guess we're already using the weConnect product in active learnings quite frequently with Belgium and the head office there. So, yeah, it's already in use, and I was just using it last night actually. So, yeah, no, it works very well.
Thank you. Rahesh, you selected D. I mean, you're not sure about deploying a new setup right now?
Correct, Craig. At the moment, we're just working with the IT team members to see what platform they would like to work with. So at the moment, we're still deciding, but this looks pretty fantastic, to be honest with you. So, yeah, fingers crossed.
Well, that's good. So as you can see on the video wall that I'm looking at, there's quite an array of answers or the multiple choice selections popping up over your face. Now, as there is no correct or incorrect answer for this particular question, let's gauge that A, in this case, was a correct answer. You'll see that the colours over the top of each person's answer change colour now to correct for green and red for an incorrect answer. So it really gives you a very quick overview about how people answered, what they answered, and it allows that promotion of two-way engagement, which is really a key feature of the weConnect platform. The UC platforms really focus on really teaching in one direction. As soon as you join a Teams or a Zoom meeting, most people are going on mute, most people are switching off their camera, so they're really just taking in that presentation or that audio. Here we really try to promote that realistic classroom experience by everyone enabling their camera and video so everyone can participate in the classroom presentation. So a little bit of a recap. weConnect was designed for education purposes on behalf of education people, so designed with a ESA Business School. We really focus on engaging teachers and learners through content sharing, being able to share multiple pieces of content at any one point in time. So here I can pop up some of the chat, I can pop up questions coming in, so it's very easy for me to pop up multiple sources at the same time. So if one was an area of a focus, I can make that content much larger, and all the rest of the sources sort of toggle in around and size around that key focus content. So this is something that other platforms really have a hard going to present. Even if the content is coming from the participants, it'll appear as a source for me. I can bring that to screen very easily. Our platform is very flexible, so not just in the way you can join. We don't require you to install any applications. You're joining now from a Chrome browser, so it really promotes bring your own device. We don't care whether you're joining from a Mac, from a laptop, from an iPad or an Android tablet. If you can open that in a Chrome browser, you can navigate from wherever you want with an internet connection and using any device. But it's also designing around the flexibility of how the classroom is being used. So we don't require institutes to purpose build a particular style of classroom. Here they can really have that flexible learning by chopping and changing how they want to teach in that style. From 9 a.m. it may be used as a traditional classroom, 11 to 12 might be a collaboration style room, and then in the afternoon it could be a virtual classroom setting. So it really promotes flexibility of teaching and really a good return on investment from the university's point of view. The weConnect platform is designed around central management. So we have an active learning institute in cloud environment. So it's very easy for the AV and IT departments to log on, manage the solution in the back end, and make sure all the solution is up and running 100% of the time. We offer this model in a subscription service. So we have a yearly, 3-yearly, 5-yearly subscription models. And we also have, for those people looking at a CapEx solution, or maybe they have a government grant, we have a 3-year and a 5-year upfront payment to be able to secure those funds in this year's budget. So hopefully our session was a little bit not so much like this, that 19th century lean back, but a bit more engaged with bring your own device. So hopefully it was a bit like this. So our final quiz question is about how we rate these virtual classroom sessions. So on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being poor, 5 being good, please let me know what you thought. Okay, great. So I see quite a good array of 5s, meaning it was quite good. Lucky, you selected 1. Please explain why you thought this experience was poor.
My mistake, I was supposed to push 5 instead of 1.
Yeah, no problem. So one last little thing that we can do before we close off the session. If I focus you back onto the whiteboard, onto the video wall. Here what I can do is, once I close off the poll, here I can actually enable some stats. So this really shows to me how engaged people have been in the session. So it allows me a quick glance about how many times people have raised their hand, how many times they've got quizzes answers correct. So it sort of gives me a snapshot about how engaged they've been in the session. So as you saw in the video from Yevgeny, it allows us to measure some things that we normally cannot measure in a traditional classroom setting. So how many times someone raised their hand, or how many times they got their answers of the questions correct in class. So here's a good little snapshot to be able to see who was engaged. So I can see Rahesh raised his hand 2 times, 3 times now, because he's going to cheat. So it sort of gives you a focus about how some people are engaged in the session, or how some people are actually coasting through. So it allows you to then challenge them and give them a bit more of a focus on how engaged they've been in the session. So without further ado, these are my contact details. So if you have any further questions, please give me a call or send me an email with these details. And I'd like to open up the floor now with any questions you may have from the session. Chris, you have a question?
What's the pricing model, Greg?
Okay, so pricing is actually based on a subscription. So we have a yearly subscription, 3-yearly subscription, and a 5-yearly subscription. So we actually include the NCN hardware devices into that package. So it's a great feature to include that hardware, because the university or the institute doesn't have to worry about any warranty. They don't even have to worry about managing legacy devices over that 5-year experience. So all that hardware and writing off hardware was sort of taken out of their hands. They just pay for the service as they see fit. So it really promotes for that flexibility of being able to scale up and down as they require the functions. Any other questions? Yeah, Chris, another question.
How do you address the security question?
Yeah, good point. So that's really prominent at the moment. We have quite a number of security factors built in. So here we need to create an account. So when you sign in, you have your own username and password. This can actually be set up per institute to be a single sign-on. So then you could actually pop out and be authenticated by your corporation or your university. So then the security is actually managed by the university and not by us. You can actually have multi-factor authentication, so that way you get an SMS password sent to your phone, or actually use a Google Authenticator app to actually have a time-based authentication password to pop in. So we really take security seriously. Currently we're actually undergoing some penetration tests, because as people are more focused on security, we want to provide that feedback of how our platform stands up. Anyone else with questions?
How are younger children dealing with the platform?
Yeah, it's a good question, Philip. We have the weConnect platform deployed across a few high schools, no primary schools as yet. So in the high school level, they're using it in a traditional style classroom method. So it's basically used as wireless presentation devices, sharing your content onto a screen, but then be able to push and pull that content around to multiple screens within the classroom. We have some deployments at some of the TAFE functions in Australia, so Chisholm TAFE and Queensland TAFE. So they're using it in a real collaboration style setting, being able to have the students work in groups, and the teacher is then free to roam around and have the students show what how they're progressing on their group work, grab their group number 1 and put that up onto the teacher screen, grab the group number 4 as well, put that as a side-by-side comparison to see how each of the groups are going about that group work. So I think in that sort of collaboration environment setting, it's great for the students to work in a group environment, share from their own devices onto their own group screen. So they're really promoting that interaction, that engagement session by being able to share their own content, and then get that feedback from the teacher to be able to roam around the room and give some feedback on their work.
Mm. That's good.
Any other questions coming in? Yeah, Chris.
Might be more of an invitation for a comment than a question, but do you get a sense now that distance learning or remote learning is going to be becoming a permanent fixture for higher ed?
Yeah, it's a very good question. Prior to the coronavirus, I really saw MBA and executive MBA business schools really having that focus on distance learning because of their participants, managers and CEOs flying around the globe. So they really needed to provide that flexibility to join a session. Whereas universities, the standard universities, would like to be able to provide that as an option to share you have the option to come into the university or actually join a remote session. So I think because of the coronavirus, this may give an avenue to some universities to offer classes in a remote setting. We already saw online courses taking a big step in Australia. Because we're such a vast country, I think it will give dedicated institutes around the country that option to be able to provide to really remote areas of Australia the flexibility to be able to join some classes which weren't possible before.
Question in the chat.
Is that from Greg?
From Gavin, there's a question. Is there a limit or optimum number of students?
Yep. Okay, so the maximum students we have at the moment is 112. However, we're trying to work on our scalability to improve that. So the biggest virtual classroom we have to date is the ESSEC Business School in Paris. That's upwards of 80 students. We're working with a couple of high-end universities in the US. One is probably one of the most famous business schools in the US. They've just signed to have 2 96-seat virtual classrooms. So that's going to be great to have them available and on board. So we're charging within a virtual classroom environment, priced per seat. So however you want to scale up your platform, you can start with 6 students and then increase as demand sees fit.